Hello, my name is Christine, aka Crafty Potential, and I'm on the design team for Arden Creative Studios. And in today's video, I thought I would take a couple of the cards that I've made with the Season of Joy collection and try and make like a hybrid crossover between them. So do this cool background using the ornament die. That kind of gives a Moroccan sort of look, but also combining the fact that it is an ornament as well, and try and do the ornament shaker as part of the actual background of like a Moroccan pattern. So we're going to see how this goes. I've got a bunch of pieces that I've already cut ready, a couple of bits of ephemera and bits and pieces like that, and so let's see how this sort of hybrid card comes together. So for this project we're using the gorgeous Maker Series ornament die from the Season of Joy collection from Katie Petite. We're also going to use the Season of Joy rub-ons onto acetate as something a little bit different, using them onto acetate so you kind of get the translucency of them, having something shaking behind them. We're also going to use a little selection from the Season of Joy ephemera pack, which is the essentials one, and I've also been using a couple of bits and pieces from the patterned paper, one of the actual patterns, one of the pop-out pieces at the back, and I've also been using some of the solid colours of paper from the 12x12 as well. When I got my collection, I took one of each of the 12x12 sheets out of the paper pad and trimmed them down to my favourite size, and then I've got them all here. So as I'm working with the collection, I've got the perfect solid colours. I don't have to go looking for cardstock. I've got the perfect solid colours ready for when I'm crafting, and I've used a few of them to cut out some of the ornament shapes as well. So let's try and get a layout done first. So I've cut a bunch of pieces ready that I think are going to work, but what we want to do is I've already cut an aperture in my actual like base panel piece for my card. So I'm just going to place the acetate behind there, and then I'm going to build up around with the extra shapes that I've cut from patterned paper, and these tessellate together really nicely with a nice little gap between them, so it almost looks like tiles, you know, having a ceramic tile and the grout between them. So I'm just going to place a few of them in different areas on this background, kind of trying to create a pattern as we go. And I've cut some full designs, and some of them are partial pieces using leftover scraps and bits and pieces as well. And in some cases I needed a partial piece that was like top and bottom, and in some cases I needed a partial piece that was more of the side of this design as well. So you can kind of play around with how you're getting these pieces out of your patterned papers. And I think maybe one more bit there. And I think that's probably going to be all of the pieces that I've got really. That one could go there, but then no, I think like that is going to look good. So I think that's going to be our background, unless we feel like it looks too busy later on. But we've got that sort of planned out for our background. Here's going to be our shaker. Now for the shaker, we want this to look like an ornament. So in that ornament die set, you have got the little bauble caps that correspond to the different sizes. So I'm going to put that in position, and I've cut that out of a pearlescent silver cardstock, because I used like a holographic silver cardstock for this card, but I thought let's make it a little bit different and use a pearlescent silver instead. I've also cut out a few of these beautiful stars that you get in the ornament die set as well, because I had them scattered on my shaker card for the original version. So we could add a few of these scattered across the design as well, maybe bringing parts and pieces of them in too, unless we feel like it looks too busy. But we've got those there ready to kind of create more of a design. Then this card that was mostly focusing on the Moroccan background, I had used an ephemera piece of a poinsettia. So I've got another one of these from the ephemera pack, so we could use this poinsettia to tie that in. And I've also got one of the other pieces of ephemera that I've put a 1-inch epoxy dome in the centre. It fits absolutely perfectly, and that's what I had put in the centre of this poinsettia on this card. So I've got that ready in case we want to do something like that on this card. I've also picked out Sleigh Bells Are Ringing as our sentiment, and I've also punched out this one from the paper pad that says This Is Joy, so we could do a combination of those two sentiments together. I don't think we're needing that poinsettia actually. I quite like it without the poinsettia at this point, but I do want to put a rub-on the acetate to show you how easy it is to transfer those onto the acetate. So on the original one, I've done the largest Santa just there, but this little fella here, he's going in a good direction. I think possibly the small little Santa just there might look quite nice on this one. Let's have a look at what he looks like. So there he is on the sheet, and if we carefully pick this up without tilting it around too much, we might be able to just position him behind there to see what we think of him being there as well. I think he's going to fit really nicely just there. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. So we're going to go with the same sort of style of using the Santa in there again, but I think he's going to work really, really nicely. And to add a rub-on onto acetate, you just do it in the exact same way that you would do it for adding it onto cardstock, onto your patterned papers, onto vellum. Any way that you have normally been adding your rub-ons on is the exact same way that you'll add them onto your acetate as well. So I'm just going to trim around this, giving myself a little border but missing all of the other designs that are around there. And when you're using rub-ons, you want to make sure you cut out the front and the backing sheet at the same time, because otherwise they're going to get stuck to things and then you won't be able to use them because they'll have bits of the design missing if they get stuck to things. So to get a positioning right, I'm thinking taking our piece of acetate, make sure it's clean and there's not bits of powder or anything stuck on it, putting the aperture from the card underneath there, so then we know if the aperture is that size, we know there's enough acetate around the edge that we can stick behind our aperture on our card, and then we can actually place our Santa in the perfect position. So when we actually build our shaker card, we're not going to have, you're only seeing Santa's feet or he's at a wonky angle or something. You're going to have him in the nice position. So I think maybe having him about here, because if you're thinking of what you're putting in the shaker, you've got a bit of area down here then for it to sort of build up at the bottom of the shaker then as well. So let's carefully peel him off the backing and then position him like so. And we can press that down, and then we can take whatever applicator you like to use, whether you use the lolly stick that comes with it. I like to use the glide folder from Tonic, and I'm just going to press all over to get good contact between the rub-on transfer and my acetate. And in person you can kind of see this border getting clearer as you're working. Can you kind of see how there's a little border around the actual design? That's kind of getting clearer as I'm pressing it down. Okay, so now we should be able to peel off the backing, and we've got Santa on our acetate ready to turn him into a shaker card. So I think that looks really nice. So before we forget our nice layout that we've created, I think the best thing is going to be to take a photo of this so that we can remember how we've laid our patterned papers out to know where to put them back into position. So now we've got our photo, I think I'm actually just going to go for it and stick everything on. So I think sentiments will be with 3D foam because they're sort of in the foreground, and I think everything else I am just going to do with normal glue to stick it all down nice and flatly on the card. And I don't feel like it's too busy at the moment. How we've had that laid out, I think that looks like quite a nice arrangement. So I'm going to go with that and just stick everything down. So I'm going to add my adhesive on the back of my shapes and then stick them into position. into position, I'm going to flip this over and trim off all of the excess. Just following along the white of the main card panel to trim against. Okay, then we can start building our shaker portion of this. So we can position Santa where we want him to go, and then we can flip this over, add some glue around the perimeter, and a little bit on the corners here because we know that there's a square of acetate going behind here. Then we can flip that back over and we can see at what position we want Santa to be. I think there is quite nice. We can press that down, and if you are worried at all about this acetate coming off, not being stuck properly with wet glue, you can also take sellotape and put it around the edges to really hold that acetate down. So I'm just going to do a couple of pieces just so that's held down nicely. Now, before we finish off our shaker, we need to decide what we want behind our shaker, because you need something behind it. But do I just want to use white? Would white card be better because Santa will pop better from the white, but then we might not be able to see the shape of the ornament? So we can look through the patterned paper pad, but I feel like everything is a bit busy in here unless we introduce another colour into it. So if we perhaps, there's this like minty kind of colour, we could maybe use a little bit of that, or this one with all of the holly and mistletoe on, that might look quite nice, maybe a bit busy. For my original one I actually used part of one of these pieces here to go behind it, but I feel like that is going to be too busy for this one. So I think for the behind that ornament I might go back to my Page Starters Solids pad, and perhaps the lighter pink or even the slightly darker one might look quite nice behind. I think that light pink's going to work really nicely. Okay, so we're going to go with the Page Starters Solid paper pad, and the light pink is going to look really lovely behind there, nice and subtle, just to give a little bit of colour, and it kind of goes with the faded colours that are on here as well. So let's just cut that into a rectangle. Then to build up our shaker, we're going to flip this over. We're going to take some 2mm depth foam tape, so it's nice and sort of got a high profile on it. And we're actually going to try and cover as much of the background as we can with our foam tape, because we want the whole card to be raised up to the same level. And if you want to be able to use like the full width of a piece, but there's a tiny bit that it won't fit, you can just like snip a chunk out of your tape as well, and still use or utilise that full sort of width of your foam tape too. So we're just going to create ourselves a little well around our ornament shape here. We are going to use microbeads in this shaker, so before we go any further, we need to make sure that this piece of paper is going to cover the little well that we have created around here, and that is going to cover it really nicely. And then we also need to check that there's no annoying little gaps where little microbeads could escape out of, and we also want to make sure Yeah, that's all right. That none of the foam tape is overlapping over the window as well. But my top tip for when you want to use microbeads and you're not 100% sure if your well that you have created is completely secure for putting microbeads in, and you feel like maybe some of them will escape out of there, once you've taken the backing tape off of this, take your glue and just put a little dab of glue wherever you think a microbead could possibly escape. You can be as particular about this as you want, but if you feel like a microbead could possibly escape out of one of those corners, just put a little bit of glue there, and then instead of escaping, it will get stuck in the glue, or the glue will seal up the hole before something touches it as well, depending on how long you leave it to dry. So for the inside of this shaker, I'm just going to use some star-shaped confetti with a sort of white iridescent finish on it, and then I'm also going to use some silver microbeads because the silver will go really nicely with the pearlescent silver card that we have used as well. So we're just going to carefully put some microbeads in here too. You want to be careful with microbeads because they're so tiny, they really can bounce, and if they get up onto the foam tape and you haven't realised, when you try to seal your shaker card, you might have the little bumps on the foam tape and then you might not get a good enough seal and they will escape anyway. So do just be a little bit wary, make sure none of them are kind of getting on the foam tape, or if they do, try and pick them off before you put the backing on. So now we've got that in position, or all of those confettis and things in there, we can place our paper on top, and I think I might have to remove these as well. Okay, so we can place our paper with the light side down over our aperture and press that nice and firmly into position all of the way around, making sure all of that foam tape is catching on our backing paper. Then we can flip it over and see that lovely shaker just with that really subtle pink background. It just needed to be not white, it needed to be slightly off colour, and I think that Page Starters paper worked perfectly for that. So now we've got to this stage, I'm going to add some double-sided tape on the back of this paper, and then I'm going to put it straight onto my card blank ready, because we've got all of that adhesive exposed, and you can definitely just put your backing pieces back on there whilst you're working with the rest of the card. But as I know that I'm definitely going to be putting this on a card blank, I might as well stick it on at this point. So I'm just going to remove all of those. Okay, so now we've got our shaker and we've got our Moroccan background, so we have successfully combined those two cards in design. We can just finish it off with a sentiment. I'm thinking the sleigh bells are ringing because of Santa there, and he is ringing. Oh no, he's not ringing a bell. I thought he was ringing a bell, he's holding a lantern, but I think it still works because obviously sleigh bells are always ringing when Santa's around. And then I thought This Is Joy works really nicely as an extra sentiment on here as well. So I'm going to use a lower profile foam tape of like 1mm high to stick these ones on. So I've got a little narrow piece here that's already been cut, so I can use that. And then I'll use a bit of a wider piece on the banner. Okay, so now we've got to this stage, our ornament needs to be hanging from something, and because I've used silver, I'm just going to take a silver gel pen from my stash, and I'm just going to draw little ovals that touch each other as they go up to the top of the card. And that's just going to give the illusion that there's a little metal chain holding on to the ornament that's hanging there. And then I don't feel like we're going to need this, it's going to cover it up too much. Unless we do definitely want a poinsettia, we could have a look at the laser cuts from this collection as well, because there are some small little poinsettias and different accents within this laser cut set, and there might be something that would be perfect for that little corner there. Oh, this has just fallen out, this little piece of mistletoe. No, I don't think that quite goes there. We've also got a little heart button that's fallen out as well. We've got tiny green poinsettias. We've got little postage stamps. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything in here that's going to go. Okay, if there's nothing in there, let's just double check the ephemera pack as well. What other small elements are in here? There is like these leaves and berries that are in here, but then we're bringing in green and we haven't actually got any other green on this card. So then we might have to add something else green to make it tie in if we do decide we want something like that. We could put a little berry up there. It does look quite sweet actually. Or maybe we could use a few of them and bring in the green that way, you know, if we're combining a few together. Could do happiest season. That's quite nice actually. And then maybe another one of those berry clusters as well. If we can find one in the same colour family. So that's sort of more, yeah, that kind of, oh no, it's a bit more green, that one maybe. I don't know. Maybe there, or maybe... It's a bigger one. Yeah, maybe 3 of them would work nicely. Okay. So we can put those back away, and I'll actually put those other pieces back that we were going to use as well, and they'll be ready for another project. Okay, so we're now going to go with 3 little embellishments. On some of your die cut ephemera, if you're not happy when it has maybe a slightly wider border on one side than the other, you can just take your scissors and trim it down a little bit. Because occasionally they're not always 100% in the centre, but just trim a little bit off and then they'll look really nice on your project. So yeah, I think that's going to finish it off really nicely actually. So let's take a little bit more foam tape to go on the back of this little one here. Just to raise that up a nice little bit. And there are also enamel dots in this collection, so you could definitely scatter in some enamel dots as well if you want to. But I think maybe we've made it busy enough at the moment. I don't think it needs anything else in here, but that would be a nice extra addition. And I think I'm going to stick happiest season down flat, so that means I'll stick the other one down flat behind it as well. I quite like that you get so many little sentiments in these collections, because you don't feel like you're using them all up. You can add a little sentiment cluster of putting a few different ones together and creating your own sentiments. You've got happiest season, sleigh bells are ringing, this is joy as the sentiment. I think it works quite nicely mixing different ones together. And having the mix of different fonts looks lovely as well. Okay, let's just put these bits on. Oh. Okay. Oh, I don't want to stay stuck. Right, now we can just tuck that underneath there. Do we go even further underneath? Yeah, maybe further underneath like that. Okay, so I think we've actually successfully combined those two cards together to create kind of like a hybrid of the two. So we've taken these two cards we've been inspired by the background of this card, and then we've been inspired by the shaker element of this card plus the scattered effect on here as well, and then we have combined them both to create this version of the card. So I quite like doing that kind of thing, combining a couple of ideas that you've had, and it works really nicely. So there you go. Why not try combining some different ideas from different design team members to create your own hybrid kind of version of a card as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.